welcome to You Make Sense. This podcast is a manual to understanding your human experience so that you can navigate the world with freedom, ease, empowerment, and create the life that you desire. Remember, you make sense, all parts, always. In this episode, we're going to talk about the rupture and repair process in our relationships. Ruptures, disconnections, and arguments are a normal part of being in a relationship. And yet it's the thing that so many of us struggle with the most. Like so many things, this is rooted in our earliest childhood experiences predominantly. And then, of course, other relationships affect this as well. But so many of us struggle to navigate this normal process that we're going to find no matter whom we are in relationship with. Some of us may tell ourselves, if I just found this perfect person, then this wouldn't be happening. But of course, that person, not only are they not perfect, but they are not an identical match of us, meaning they're going to be different. And by the way, our relationships are where our childhood wounding gets poked at the most. We will draw in partners who the hope is they don't replicate everything that didn't work in our childhoods. The hope is that perhaps we called in somebody whom is a healthier version than the place that we came from, if that place was not a place that was safe or that had a lot of trauma in it. And yet, there will be characteristics about the dynamic that are going to remind our system of the past. And this happens to every single one of us. And I want you to think of this certainly not as a failure or something where you're doomed, but instead, this is an opportunity for us to do the work that can only be done inside of a relationship. So today we're going to talk about the rupture and repair process and how we can begin facilitating a healthier version of that so that our relationships can really thrive. Every relationship, as I named, is going to be filled with ruptures all the time, really. And healthy relationships are not void of ruptures. What qualifies a healthy relationship is that the couple or the people in relationship are able to repair, and they're able to repair quickly. And when we're able to do that, the rupture and repair process actually facilitates creating a deeper foundation with one another inside of the relationship, deeper intimacy and deeper connectivity. So we're going to talk first about where a lot of us find ourselves currently in our relationships and the roadblocks and the challenges that we encounter, why they're happening, and then we'll get to what we can do about it. And of course, we've got some great questions today that I will answer on the topic as well. And for most of us, we weren't taught how to navigate this rupture and repair process. When a rupture occurred for many of us, it felt like the connection was lost, or perhaps love was withheld, or we were harmed and hurt in a specific way. And so the result of that is our nervous systems see a rupture as a danger, meaning I'm either going to be made to feel like I'm inherently bad, or I am harmful, or someone's going to leave. And in both of those situations, what then occurs in our adult lives is when we encounter a rupture, our nervous systems are going to come to our aid to protect us from that experience. And the other thing is, most of us didn't see healthy repair. We may have seen our caregivers fighting. Most of us didn't see them actually come back together in connection and do the repair. So because of that, a lot of the times what occurred is everything just got pushed under the rug. So we experience this perpetual cycle of witnessing or experiencing ruptures, and nobody knows what to do about the rupture. So then we kind of let it go and pretend it didn't happen. But of course, then it continues to occur again and again. And then that means that's usually what we're experiencing in our adult lives. So the first thing I want to do is explain what's actually occurring when we experience a rupture, disconnection, or a fight in our closest relationships. And we're going to talk specifically about romantic partnership. So the first thing I need to introduce to you is parts work. Maybe you've done parts work or IFS work. Perhaps you've listened to episodes on this podcast. Please go listen to those episodes on parts because that will really inform what I'm talking about here as well. So the concept of parts is that we have our truest self, our adult self, the one that's here in this current year of 2025. And then we have these other parts of ourselves that are stuck in past experiences that we have, particularly overwhelming or traumatizing experiences of the past. And so the way our nervous systems work is we have this really brilliant threat detector we talk about here a lot called neuroception. It looks out into the world all the time to see if we're safe or not. And it looks to an internal database to let it know if we are safe. Now, when it comes to our romantic partnerships, that dynamic or situation is going to remind our nervous systems the most of our earliest childhood experiences. Why? Because they have similar flavorings. So, for example, a romantic partnership is going to be your most important person. This becomes your home, the person you turn to for support, connection, love, more than perhaps anyone. And so then the threat detector says, well, what information do we have on that? And of course, it's going to look to our earliest childhood experiences, which is the blueprint for home, belonging, connection, love, etc. And so what occurs when we are with our partner is that a lot of the time our younger parts get confused and they think that the past is happening in the present with our partner. So it's also really important to name that as we're going out into the world and selecting a partner for ourselves, it's the threat detector that's going to do a lot of that selecting. It has that database, which is the imprint on what love is. So when it goes to choose a partner, it's going to say, well, here's what love was in the past, so that must be love now. The goal is that we do more of our internal work, so we change what's in that database. But as I said earlier, we're going to draw in people that emulate something from our childhood. And here's a really great example of that. Let's say that you had a caregiver who was really neglectful of you. They didn't choose you. Maybe they abandoned you, some flavoring of that. Now, I might do a lot of my healing work and my threat detector still says, you know what I think love is? It's when my partner's not fully able to choose me. Now, I might pick a partner who is nothing like my caregivers. They are loving and kind, and yet they really struggle with balance in their own life and they prioritize work, probably because a part of them is really getting value in the world from their doing if they're finding that they're really unable to slow down in their work. So as you can see here, that's a flavoring of what may have happened to me in my past. It's entirely different, but the flavoring of similarity is that my partner is distracted and they're not able to choose me in this moment, or they're not able to be present to me in this moment. And so what happens is, let's say that my partner is, they committed to having dinner with me on Friday night, and all of a sudden Friday afternoon rolls around, and for the sixth time in the last couple of months, they cancel and say, I really have to work late. I'm sorry, I can't be there. So what's going to happen is my threat detector is going to say, what does this remind me of? It looks to the database and it's reminded of past experience where I was neglected. And then all of a sudden, it's not my adult self who's experiencing that with my partner. In that moment, that younger part is now inhabiting my experience and they are re-experiencing everything they felt back then in the here and now with me. That's our vulnerable part. There are many different parts we have. We have vulnerable parts, protectors, and managers. The vulnerable part is the part that experienced the deep wounding. They did not have the safety and the mutually empathic witness in order for them to process it, meaning they were all alone. So that part feels all of those things. Now, the beautiful thing is along the way, we develop what are called protector parts. And protector parts' job is to ensure that that vulnerable part never has to feel the thing they felt in the past ever again. They work very hard to ensure that that doesn't happen. So what happens in that situation is when that younger part feels that affect of the past, the protector immediately shows up to defend that young part, and they look outside of ourselves and they say, who just caused that young part to feel this thing? So whomever is in front of you, including an elephant statue in the corner of your room, whatever it is, whoever's in front of you is what that protective part is going to say is the reason for that young part's experience occurring. And by the way, the person doesn't have to be physically in front of you. It could also be that I think of that person and it's about them. But more often than not, we are not going to be thinking about the origin of that wound. We're going to be looking to how our present life is causing the wounding, and that's what it's going to feel like. So in a relationship, let's go back to that example, my partner who's loving and kind, and yet still struggles with balance and being a workaholic, which is their own parts showing up and all of that. They've let me down again. And so the young part feels the pain of being rejected in their childhood that engulfs my experience. And then I have a protector that comes in and they have like armor on and a sword. And their job is to defend against this person who they think is going to be just like my childhood. And they take their sword out. So instead of seeing my partner as my ally, they see my partner as my enemy. And they're going to do whatever they can to ensure that vulnerable part doesn't have to feel the pain of the past. They'll do one of two things. Number one, they'll either repeat what they did back then. So whatever we had to do back then to maintain safety, they'll do, or they will do what they weren't able to do back then. So here's an example of that. Let's say I wasn't safe as a child to express anger around what was occurring, but now I'm in this loving relationship and my partner is safe. So therefore, what happens is all of that suppressed anger that's actually about my caregiver is coming out at my partner. And I say something passive aggressive, like, you know what? I guess everything comes before me. Or I don't know how, or we threaten, I don't know how much longer I can do this with you. Or we poke at them and say, you know, I do everything for you and you do nothing to show up for me. Or we hang up on them or whatever. All of those things are taking my sword out and I'm seeing my partner as dangerous to me and I'm doing whatever I can to ensure the young part doesn't have to feel that. Now, you know what's happening on the other side? Our partner is having their own version of that because they've drawn in a partner whom pokes at some of their unresolved wounding that's asking to be resolved. So let's say, here's an example. Let's say my partner had a hypercritical parent and it was never enough, no matter what they did, never enough. You could have done this better. Why didn't you do this? You could have, and just nagging them all the time. You're not enough. You're not enough. You're not enough is the message that they got. So I am not like that hypercritical parent. I am not giving them the message that they aren't enough. Maybe a lot of the time I'm even adorning them with a lot of love. But in that moment when my protector has the sword out and I'm communicating from a defended way, not a vulnerable way, a defended way, being critical, their vulnerable part feels the pain of their past. And that younger part is re-experiencing what it was like to never be enough for their mother, father, parent, and the depth of how deep that hurt. And so in a millisecond, their protector shows up. And their protector does something different than mine. It doesn't take the sword out to poke at me. It literally removes the young part and says, we're out of here. And so their protector says, this isn't going to work. Nope, it's not going to work. Or they say, I can't talk to you. Or they just emotionally disconnect and shut down. Their protector is trying to defend their vulnerable part. My protector is trying to protect my vulnerable part. But the thing is, these protectors don't see that this is actually a safe dynamic where real, true repair can happen. What these parts see is their past being superimposed onto the present, and they're doing whatever they can to ensure those young parts are never harmed. And so what happens is most of us do not know how to resolve this because it's literally a 10-year-old and let's say a 12-year-old present. And that 10-year-old and 12-year-old have no idea how to navigate conflict resolution. So they go round and they go round and they go round till they get exhausted or the fight becomes so big. And then we just don't talk about it. We wait 24 hours or the next day or a few hours. And then after some time, our adult selves are back. So those young parts have gone to rest. Adult me is back and their adult self is back. And we're at this place where we're like, oh my God, I want this to work so badly. And I don't know what's happening. Why does this pattern keep happening? And now that we're in our open adult selves, we come back together in connection and we haven't resolved what actually occurred. And because of that, those young parts are going to continue to get triggered in the way that they were in the past. And the protectors are going to continue to come online. And then we're going to continue to brush it under the rug and no resolution occurs. And another thing that can happen for a lot of us is we attempt to repair, but nobody taught us how to repair. So we come back into connection, and instead of communicating from vulnerability, we communicate a complaint. So we say something like, you always do this to me, or I don't know why you do this to me, or I'm just so pissed off that this keeps happening, or this isn't fair. So I'm communicating lots of complaints there. Now, a complaint is a wonderful way to protect you from vulnerability, which is why a lot of us do it. Because underneath every complaint is the unmet need. And again, for many of us, when we weren't taught the rupture and repair process, we only know how to come back together and complain with our armor up. And that's really a protective way to keep us from ever having to expose the most vulnerable parts. But the thing is, the only way for those vulnerable parts to get their needs met and for those parts to get the healing they never got in the past is by us opening and exposing. Another thing that we can do is we can communicate from what I call our representative. So instead of communicating vulnerably, it's almost like your own CEO or therapist shows up, and without any affect or emotional connection, I say the words of what happened. So I might say when this occurred, I felt hurt by it and it really didn't feel good. And it reminded me of all these other things, and I really don't want to feel that way. And as you can hear from my expressing that, I am disconnected from the emotion behind what I'm actually feeling. So when I either communicate a complaint or the representative communicates to my partner, more often than not, my partner is going to get defensive of their actions or behaviors or whatever happened, or they'll struggle to experience empathy for us because they can't fully attune to our experience because we are not attuned to our experience. So this is a dynamic that we get into so often. We either, again, brush it under the rug, we communicate a complaint, or we have a representative trying to communicate. And this can lead us to an experience of feeling like our relationship is hopeless, which a lot of us get to. And I just want to name, if you are in any version of this experience right now in your relationship, it doesn't mean the relationship cannot work. It means that we must begin understanding the parts of us that are getting triggered and activated in our relationship and begin comforting those parts and getting really clear on what is our adult self's truth here and how do we get our adult self online to be the one that does the communicating of the repair. So now I want to talk about the process of repair in our relationships and a really tangible way to begin doing that. The first thing that's really important to understand is that you cannot solve the problem from the state of the problem. Meaning, if both parties are dysregulated, remember, it's like we have our swords out. We are superimposing the past on the present. We're essentially have traveled time, and I am not with my partner. I am with my caregivers, and they're with theirs, and we have young parts trying to resolve. So the rule is we must pause. The more you try to resolve from that place, usually what occurs is the bigger the rupture becomes. So we want that to be a rule inside of our relationships. And by the way, going through this roadmap or this plan with our partner when we're regulated and we're both on the same team is really what we want to do. So that's the rule. We pause. And then what we want to separately do is focus on regulation. Just a caveat to that to name, if you're anxiously attached, this part's going to be challenging. So I want you to see if you can turn towards another person that you can regulate with. If you're avoidant, you're going to say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we're taking a break. But your job is to remember we have to come back into connection. So then we want to regulate and get our most adult self present in our bodies. So essentially what we're doing is we're grabbing the steering wheel of our nervous system. So one way to do that is think of one moment in time where you felt most capable and able. Maybe in your work you feel that way, or when you're volunteering, or you're embodying your purpose, or you're parenting. So when does adult me show up the most? Maybe in nature. So feel that version of you and allow it to embody your experience, even in your physicality. So noticing your body elongating, you're able to expose yourself more. I'm feeling my body's growing. I'm feeling anchored, present here. So all of those things indicate that adult self is here. Once we have our adult selves here, we want to connect to the vulnerable part that originally felt the first wounding that is being reminded of that right now. So connect to that part and ask yourself, who are they? can ask yourself, when is the first time I remembered experiencing this? Or you can feel into the sensations they were experiencing and just ask the sensations, how old are you? Or if you could talk, what would you say? That will give you a clue into how old this part is. Our work is to begin reparenting these young, vulnerable parts. Your partner cannot rescue them. Only you can do this work. And the beautiful thing is, that's really empowering because we can do it. So what we want to do is, there's two features I say a lot that make up a successful parent. One, they are soft and loving and can attune with us. And the second is they're ferociously protective. So we want to get to know that part, hear them, listen to them, see them as separate from you because they are separate from you. And from that place, you can use an as-if tool. So if I was with a scared 4-year-old, what would I do for them? I might pick them up and rock them and hum to them and let them know I'm here and let them feel me. And we want to do that literally with our part. You can place a hand on your chest and let that part know, I am here and I see you and I hear you. They need to be seen and heard. And the person who can see and hear them the most is you. So we comfort that part. Then we want to connect into the brilliant protector who has been doing their job for a very long time to make sure that young part is safe. And we have protectors that will try to keep us from relationships. They'll try to keep us from ever being hurt in the same way again. And they're going to have a lot of different tactics to ensure that. So I want you to connect into who is this protector and begin getting to know them. A lot of the times it can be easier to connect with the vulnerable part. And a lot of us can feel like we don't even know who the protector is. So get to know them. All you have to do is look at the pattern that shows up in your relationship. How do I self-protect or self-defend? That is your protector, and begin to get to know them. A lot of the times we can have a lot of anger at our protector. Like, why are you sabotaging my relationship? Why are you destroying this? And they aren't trying to destroy it. They're trying to keep the young ones safe. And the more that you become the primary parent to that young vulnerable part, the less they have to do that. Another wonderful thing that I do personally in my life, and I do with clients that I work with, is imagine that there's this one-way glass. You know that glass when interrogation's happening, you can see in, but they can't see you. So I take the hand of my parts, my vulnerable part and my protector part. And what I do is, literally by taking their hand, I show them my partner. So you can do this. Show them your partner. And I want you to show them all the things that your partner does and says that are so very different from what they experienced in the past. And so whatever it is that the vulnerable part is scared of and the protector is keeping them away from, like maybe they're afraid that they aren't safe because people weren't safe in the past, or they're afraid that they don't love them fully because people didn't in the past. You get the idea. Whatever it is they're afraid of, we want to show them how our partner's different. So you can literally recall past experiences that happened like earlier this week or yesterday or whatever, and just take their hand and let them see them. Let them see how very different they are and really let that metabolize. This is very important. It's the decoupling, this overcoupling dynamic that has happened where I'm making my partner my past. And that exercise alone can really facilitate so much change for us when we embody it. Another thing that can be so helpful is embodying and feeling into the positive attributes of our partner. So much of the time, our protective parts are oriented towards what our partner's doing wrong and the ways in which they aren't showing up. And we can become an expert in everything that's not working because our nervous systems are always looking for how we might not be safe. So that's why that occurs. What we want to do is build our capacity for not only noticing all the positive, but deeply feeling it. So I think of this like a marinating process on your own, like a meditation. Every day, even if it's for 5 minutes, let me think about a kind thing that they did, or a loving thing that they did, or a thoughtful thing that they did, or the way that they do see me as interesting and they are curious about my life, whatever. And feel into that experience. This is something that I do regularly. Feel into that and bring it alive in your body. And what we're wanting to do is work the muscle of building our capacity to be oriented towards all the good things instead of oriented towards what isn't working. And when we do that, our partner is going to feel pretty chronically like they can't get anything right if that's what we're oriented to. So this is a really wonderful exercise of how we can show our parts that the past is different, and also how we can really learn to be oriented towards the good. from our adult self, I want to ask myself, what is my truth about what happened? Because, the thing is, our partners ought not entirely off the hook. It doesn't mean that they didn't get anything wrong or something didn't happen that hurt us if our younger parts are being activated. A part of it might be about our younger part, but a part of it might actually be about our adult selves too. So from my adult self, I can tease that apart. What about that experience was really about my young self? And from adult me, what's actually true? And in that experience, it might be that, I really need you to be making progress towards there being more space for me in your life. And it doesn't mean that, overnight I have the expectation that you aren't going to still struggle with prioritizing work, but that there really needs to be incremental change for me, because right now this isn't enough. And we want to, before we communicate this, we want to feel into that truth in my body. It is okay to have a need. For a lot of us in our childhood, our needs weren't validated or they were minimized. So it's really common that we can undermine our own needs. And so I want you to feel into the truth. Yeah, I actually do have this need. I need to be a priority for you, and feel that. It's the affect or the feeling that anchors it in for us as truth. So once I have that clarity, what did I actually need? And it could be something like this. I need to be a priority. And I need for you to not cancel plans. So unless it is an emergency and an actual emergency, I need you to show up if you say you're going to. And that's a need I have, and it's really important to me. And I'm anchored in that. So, and we want our partner to do the same thing. So now when we come back into connection, we only come back into connection when we're both regulated. From that place, the first thing that we want to do is kind of like wave a green flag of connection and safety. So that could be like starting with a hug, giving each other a compliment that we're actually feeling, meaning here's something really positive that you do for me and it feels so good. So communicating that. And then we have a rule that we each take turns sharing. So each person is going to have space. But it's very important that we each have a turn, because otherwise what can happen is the other person can come in and then all of a sudden we're back in a rupture again. So we want to start, if I'm starting, I'm going to start by sharing using I language. So I'm letting them behind the curtain. And what's really important here is that we don't have that representative or CEO doing the talking. And that's something that I have done for a very long time. And being aware of that, am I communicating without affect or feeling? And if so, it's going to be really hard for my partner to be able to empathize with me. But if instead I can, from my adult self, vulnerably communicate, hey, when that happens, here's how it makes me feel. It makes me feel like I'm not important. And it also is chronically leading to this unmet need of not being prioritized by you or feeling special or valuable. And then we want to let them behind the curtain and tell them what this reminds me of. And it's not just my adult self that's feeling this. It triggers that younger part. And that's why the emotion is so big behind it. It reminds me of this thing that happened in the past, of being abandoned or whatever. And what I really need is this. And that part, my friend, is really important. Being very clear on what I need and communicating that vulnerably. Now, my partner's job is to listen and then to validate and empathize. So mirroring is something human beings really love. That means someone repeating back what it is that I shared, but not just the words, how it makes them feel. And that's attunement. So when they're able to do that, it lets me feel deeply seen and heard. And then the agreement is they're going to work on meeting that need. Now it's their turn after that to share what it was like for them. Maybe again, feeling like when you come at me in an activated place, it makes me feel like I'm a bad person and I shut down. And this reminds me of da, 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 da. So their need might be, when you're going to communicate that to me, if it can be communicated from your adult self more, or if it can be said in a way that isn't cutting or whatever it might be, or not raising your voice. I really need that. And that will support me to be able to come towards you as we are communicating. So again, we can both communicate our need and then are committed to meeting each other's need. And by the way, it doesn't mean next time we're going to get it exactly right. Our work is that we can get it 10% more right every single time. And the result of all of this is that our relationships begin to thrive. The things that feel like hopeless or they're not able to turn them around. We actually can when we do this work. And I really hope that this episode is bringing a lot of hope for you, because many of us feel entirely hopeless in our relationships, these good, beautiful relationships that we're in. And it's this work that is able to transform them. Do you want a romantic relationship that is filled with joy, fulfillment, and ease? Well, I've created a brand new 8-week program with my dear friend and colleague, Vienna Farron, called Secure and Thriving, that is meant to support you to transform the relationship that you're in or call in the one that you're desiring. Over the course of 8 weeks, we're going to teach you how to harness the power of your nervous system, address your attachment, your parts, set somatic boundaries, navigate the rupture and repair process, and so much more. So whether you're already in a relationship, you're wanting to call in the relationship that you desire, or maybe you're wanting to transform your relationship in work, with community, or with your family, this program is going to equip you with the somatic, tangible tools necessary to change the unwanted patterns and to show up in your relationships in the way that you are desiring. Check out the show notes to learn more about the program. Enrollment is open until June 2nd. So let's get to the first question that we have today.
Hi, Sarah. Your You Make Sense program was unbelievably life-changing and so healing for me. On the heels of that, I've been making amends to my wife after 10 years of a lot of harms that I contributed to our relationship. And so I'm making a lot of repairs. I guess my question is around, how can I think about the different autonomic nervous system states while making repairs? Does she have to be in ventral, for example, for me to meet her there? Can I be in ventral and meet someone in dorsal and still make a meaningful, conscious, somatic repair, sort of by being either physically or very emotionally connected and meaningfully apologizing for something? I just didn't know if you had thoughts around how I could think about the nervous system ladder in the context of making repair. Thank you.
So first, I'm so glad that You Make Sense was supportive for you. It's such an honor to have supported you through the program, and I hope you're continuing to embody that work. It sounds like you really are. This question that you submitted is so wonderful and important for people to understand. So earlier in the episode, I said that we really need regulation in order to repair. Now, maybe the most ideal scenario would be that both people are in regulation, or when this person said ventral, that's the ventral vagal complex, which is our state of regulation, where we are anchored in the present moment, feeling safe, present, and here. So ideally, that would be fantastic. But I also want to name that's not the only possibility. If you are anchored in regulation, you're really feeling that fully, and your partner, let's say, is in that dorsal state of shutdown, they're feeling hopeless, like nothing is possible, that with your regulated nervous system, you actually have the capacity to help them come out of that state of dysregulation. One of my friends and mentors, Deb Dana, says that in a therapeutic container, that the job of the therapist or practitioner is to be that anchoring force of regulation. And so as a client comes in dysregulated, my job is to keep that anchor in regulation and then to attune with them. Now, attunement isn't what you say alone. Attunement is meeting them where they are in their nervous system. So what Deb is effectively saying is the job of the clinician or practitioner is to be that anchoring force that then supports the other person to come out of dysregulation, but isn't forcing it or having an agenda, simply being that cue of safety. So in my relationship, if I'm the one that's regulated and maybe my partner, like this person, is feeling hopeless, maybe hopeless about the relationship, like it sounds like this person's partner might be feeling. And my partner's feeling shut down and like it's not going to be possible for this to work or whatever. From regulation, my job is not to try to pull them out of that experience of hopelessness or have an agenda, because their nervous system can feel that and probably will pull them into deeper dysregulation. But instead, from this place of regulation, to send a cue of safety to them and communicate fully what it is, like if this person's saying the guilt that they feel or the sadness that they feel about what happened in the relationship or the things that they caused, and really taking ownership from that place. Now, here's a caveat or an important part of this. We have to attune with their experience. So imagine that, like in this person's example, they were to go to communicate to their partner all of the things that they feel, a lot of pain about that they caused, and taking accountability. And their partner's in that shutdown state where they feel hopeless and depressed. That person's really withdrawn. Imagine that they were to communicate without attuning emotionally. So that might look like, their partner is shut down and feeling hopeless and crying, and they're not attuning, but they say the right words. Like, I'm really sorry for all the things that I did, and I know that it wasn't great, and I feel so apologetic about it, and I wish I could go back in time, but I can't go back in time. Can you hear from my tone? I'm not really connecting to that person's experience of withdrawing. So instead, I want you to notice what this attunement is like. I am really feeling them. I can hear my nervous system and feel my nervous system come into this. I can feel the hopelessness that they have. I really understand how it's been so much, and how much maybe my parts have caused them to get to this place. And can you feel that in my system right now? I'm attuning with that person. So I would communicate from this place of, I am so sorry for the ways that I have hurt you, that I have abandoned you, not shown up for you, and there isn't an excuse for it. And I know I kept saying I was going to do the work, and after 10 years, I finally am, and I do understand if that feels like it's too late, or I do understand if you have anger about that. I just want you to know it's all welcome. And I love you so much, and I am working really hard to shift it. So if you can, now that I'm coming just back in regulation, I'm not dipping into that attunement. Can you hear the difference in my voice and feel the difference of my energy? So when we're able to do that, I hold the anchor to regulation, I attune with them, I take accountability, and also I communicate vulnerably. That's what's necessary, not with a defense, but communicate vulnerably. And that means really feeling into my own experience. And from that felt sense experience of the feelings and sensations that are arising, communicate from them. That is how we can repair in the moment if we have somebody else we're in relationship with who is not in regulation. Okay, let's go to the next question.
Hi, Sarah. I've been finding your work so helpful listening to your podcast on Spotify. I'm in my 40s and dating, and in the past decade, I've been running into some avoidant tendency men. And although I've worked on it, growing up, I had pretty emotionally unavailable parents and oftentimes felt alone. And I developed kind of a part of myself that does the work to stay in connection too aggressively. And I'm wondering how to work on allowing myself to step back more, because even though I know in my brain I should be doing that, and it's continuously working against me where I try too hard and try to help these connections, I can't work against it. So I'm wondering if you have any suggestions.
So the most important thing here is to work with our parts. And again, I have got episodes on parts work, but if you're really wanting to dive into parts work, we have programs here inside of my company that will really help facilitate and support that for you. So you can click on some of the show notes and the links in there to get more information on that. But briefly, the reason why it feels like I can't actually stop doing this is because a younger part, that protector part, has got the steering wheel. And that part is so afraid of your vulnerable part being abandoned or hurt again, that they are going to do whatever they can to stop it. And that might be pleading with our partner, like, I promise it's going to be different. Or we do the emotional labor where we're not holding them accountable and we are kind of therapizing the relationship. I'm being the therapist in the relationship and I'm letting things go that really aren't okay. And the thing is, let's say that's a 5-year-old part of me. For that 5-year-old part, the other alternative to that part feels like dying, meaning if this person leaves, I'm not going to be okay because I'm going to be 5 and all alone in the world. So the only way that we can remediate this is by beginning to reparent that part. And so what we want to do is get clear on who is that part? How old are they? Where's the first time they showed up in your life? What is that vulnerable part afraid of feeling again? And then I want you to get to know the protector part. Who are they? And how do they do their job? And do they know you yet? That's really important. And so what we want to do is anchor in our adult selves and begin coming to the aid of the young part and showing the protector how we can do the work of protecting so they don't have to. And when we become the parent to our parts, we become their greatest protector. And so imagine if you had a child who was going out and dating, you would want the very best for them. And so we would be really discern. Obviously, your teenager is not going to let you choose their partner and they're going to say, get the heck out of here. But you get the idea. That's what you're going to want. And so we want to be that discerning for our parts and really having such a high expectation of what we need in a partner. And by the way, they should have the same for us. So the more that I'm actually anchored in adult me, my parts feel safe. And that means that I am safe to communicate what's actually going on. I am safe to relinquish that managing of the relationship. And I'm safe to ask for my needs to be met too. So let's get to the next question that we have today.
I would love to know how to communicate with your partner when they are activated and how to regulate them without feeling like you're trying to fix them. So how to, first off, not take on their activation and then bring them into a state and back to clarity. Yes, without making them feel like you're mothering them or trying to change them.
If we find ourselves trying to manage our partner or change their experience, that's a clue that it's not adult you present, it's a younger part of you. So that younger part is saying, your dysregulation, to my partner, or your younger part is threatening to me. It's threatening to me because it makes me feel like the relationship might end, maybe. And so my protector comes in and says, I need to do everything I can to make sure that you're regulated, because if you're regulated, then I feel safe in this relational dynamic. So we will disregard our own truth. We will mother them. We will try to manage or placate the situation, and all of which, by the way, does not lead to health in our relational dynamic. And a lot of times can lead to resentment on our partner's part if they're feeling that kind of control, or really it's a sort of manipulation occurring there. Instead, what we want to do is anchor in our adult selves, like I've already talked about here in this episode and also in these other questions. Anchor in adult me. And from adult me, I don't actually have an agenda at all. I really want my partner to feel better, but I can tolerate them not feeling better. It's the young parts that won't be able to tolerate that because they make meaning of that I'm not going to be safe. Things aren't going to be okay. They're going to leave. So anchoring in adult me. Now, if it feels intolerable to do that in the moment, we want to have a pause here and that we both turn towards regulation. When we're regulated, we can come back into connection. And by the way, the more that you do this parts work around this, what's going to happen is adult self is going to be able to stay more online when your partner becomes dysregulated. And the result of that is I'm not internalizing their experience, meaning I'm not making it mean that I am bad or that I'm going to die, meaning a young part's not getting activated. And the more that I'm able to stay regulated, what happens usually is it helps our partner to come back into regulation faster. So let's get to the last question that we have for today.
Hello, so my question is not directly regarding the rupture itself, but rather the process leading up to it. Because I notice myself swallowing a lot of things and not speaking up. And then at some point being like a volcano and just then sort of purging it all out onto the other person that mostly then is very confused. And I just thought I'd ask how to navigate that or how to build the capacity to speak up before it's too much.
So the first step in this is we must speak up with ourselves. It's going to feel like too big of a step at first to do this with our partner. So instead, what we want to do is after an interaction, and I notice that I'm internalizing, what I want to do is anchor in adult me. And we want to ask ourselves, what part just got activated? Who is that part? And I want to then connect into what did this remind them of? It's sort of like putting the oxygen mask on the child first and then putting it on ourselves. So we want to connect to the young part and ask, what does this remind you of? What are you feeling here? What are you remembering? And comfort that part. So now I have clarity on that component of it. Then I anchor in adult me and ask myself, okay, is any of this actually about adult me? Meaning, was there something that happened that really didn't meet my adult self's need? And really anchor in that. A wonderful way, if we are challenged in finding out what our truth is, writing is a really great way to sort that out, meaning stream of conscious writing. So I might pick up the pen and connect first into the young part. What do you feel? And let that young part write to you. And then when I connect to my adult self, I want to write from that place. What did I actually feel? You can also ask yourself, what wasn't working? And then ask, what under that is the need? So I have a complaint, under that I have an unmet need. What is that unmet need? And then we want to take a tolerable step towards communicating that with our partner. That might start with, letting them know, hey, I might have to communicate this first over text or even letters that we write to each other. And it might be communicated in a short way. I'm not being fully exposing of what I'm feeling, just a little bit. And this is how we build our toleration to be able to come to our partner and say, hey, this didn't work. And allow them the opportunity to take accountability and then to meet that need for us. The more we do this, the more our parts see, oh, this is actually safe. So then that volcano doesn't become this dormant thing that eventually erupts. There is no volcano at all. It's constantly being processed. So all of the things that we talked about today are really vital in repairing our relationships. Most relationships don't work because of a lack of love or even a lack of compatibility. More often than not, they don't work because we don't know how to address our parts. We don't know how to see each other as our ally and not our enemy. But the more that we can do this work, we can come together as a team and make our relationships better and heal the past and the present. Enjoyed this episode and want to go even deeper into somatic healing? You can join my email community for free weekly teachings, more resources, and live events. Sign up using the link in the description.